A 13-ton machine made of aluminum armor drops from the cargo hatch of a transport aircraft at an altitude of several hundred meters. While the parachute canopies deploy above it, a three-man crew sits inside, strapped into Kazbek shock-absorbing seats. Within mere minutes after landing, the engine is already roaring at full power. The turret rotates toward a mock enemy, and the 100mm gun is ready to send its first high-explosive fragmentation shell exactly on target. No army in the world can do anything similar, and no country on the planet has in its arsenal a machine capable of simultaneously falling from the sky on a parachute, floating on water, firing guided missiles, and racing along a highway at speeds exceeding 70 kilometers per hour. This machine is called the BMD-4M. The story of its birth turned out to be so dramatic that a separate movie could be filmed about it. But to understand where it came from, one must go back a decade, to the era when Soviet paratroopers were essentially light infantry without their own armor. In the 50s, the airborne forces consisted of fighters with submachine guns and light weaponry who were dropped from slow-moving Li-2 and Il-14 transport planes. After landing, the paratroopers were practically defenseless before enemy tanks and armored personnel carriers. Only one man could solve this problem, General Vasily Filipovich Margolov, the legendary commander of the VDV, whom the soldiers privately called Uncle Vasya. Margolov was a frontline soldier who had gone through the entire Great Patriotic War, from the defense of Leningrad to the liberation of Vienna. He perfectly understood that infantry without armored vehicles on a modern battlefield is doomed. Upon taking command of the airborne forces in 1954, the general literally gave no peace to designers and gunsmiths. He demanded that tank builders create a machine that would be light enough for aerial dropping, but at the same time carry serious weaponry and protect the crew at least from shrapnel and bullets. The task seemed impossible because lightness and protection in armored vehicles always contradict each other. However, Margolov did not accept the word impossible. In 1964, work began on a fundamentally new machine at the Volgograd tractor plant under the leadership of designer Israel Govolov. They decided to make the hull out of aluminum alloy, which allowed for significant weight savings while providing protection from small arms bullets and shell fragments. The turret was borrowed from an infantry fighting vehicle, equipped with a 76mm gun, machine guns, and a grenade launcher. The machine turned out to be compact, amphibious, and light enough for a military transport aircraft to carry several such vehicles in its cargo bay at once. In 1969, the world's first airborne fighting vehicle, designated as the BMD-1, was adopted into service, and Soviet paratroopers finally received their own armor. But Margolov did not stop there. He was dissatisfied with the fact that the vehicles were dropped separately from the crews. While the soldiers landed on their parachutes, found their vehicles, and took their places, precious minutes passed during which the landing force remained vulnerable. The general demanded that the crews fly inside their BMDs and be ready for battle immediately upon touching the ground. Engineers considered this idea madness because the G-forces during the landing of a multi-ton machine could simply kill the people inside. However, Margolov found a way to prove it was possible, and to do this, he put the most precious thing he had on the line. On January 5, 1973, at the Slobodka Parachute Training Ground near Tula, a BMD-1 airborne fighting vehicle exited an An-12 aircraft with 2 people inside. One of them was Lieutenant Colonel Leonid Zuev, and the second was Senior Lieutenant Alexander Margolov, the natural son of the VDV commander. Vasily Filipovich consciously sent his own son on this deadly dangerous test so that no one could say the general was risking other people's children. The Kentaur multi-canopy parachute system worked normally. The shock-absorbing seats cushioned the impact, and both crew members emerged from the vehicle alive and unharmed. This day changed the history of the airborne forces forever, because from then on, Soviet paratroopers could engage in battle within minutes after being dropped without wasting time searching for equipment. In the following years, airborne fighting vehicles evolved and improved. In 1985, the BMD-2 entered service with a new turret and reinforced weaponry. By 1990, the Volgograd tractor plant produced the third generation, the BMD-3, which received a more powerful engine and an improved chassis. But the military was not satisfied with the firepower of these machines because the 30mm automatic cannon could not effectively work against fortified positions and heavy enemy armor. The paratroopers needed something fundamentally more powerful, and by the beginning of the 2000s, it became clear that the time had come for the fourth generation of airborne fighting vehicles, which was to make a real breakthrough in VDV weaponry. By the early 2000s, the Tula Instrument Design Bureau was working on a project that was to radically change the firepower of airborne armor. Engineers set themselves an ambitious task: to create a universal combat module capable of turning a light airborne vehicle into a true combat unit able to operate without the support of tanks and artillery. This module was named Bakhcha-U, and its main feature was the combination of 3 weapon systems in one turret. A 100mm rifled gun, the 2A-70, which previously was only installed on the third model infantry fighting vehicle, could fire powerful high-explosive fragmentation shells and simultaneously serve as a launcher for guided anti-tank missiles. Next to it, they paired a 30mm 2A-72 automatic cannon, and to top it off, added a 7.62mm PKT machine gun. No other airborne vehicle in the world had such a set of weapons. The designers from Tula worked together with the Volgograd tractor plant, which traditionally produced all Soviet and Russian airborne fighting vehicles, starting from the very first one. It was the Volgograd team that was supposed to install the new combat module on the chassis of the third model BMD and bring the machine to serial production. In 2004, the updated machine was shown for the first time at a Moscow arms exhibition, and specialists immediately appreciated its potential. According to the developers' calculations, the new BMD exceeded its predecessor in firepower by 2.5 times, and by some estimates, by an order of magnitude. The onboard electronics could independently track a selected target and fire even from indirect firing positions, making the vehicle suitable not only for direct combat, but also for work as light self-propelled artillery. On December 31st of that same year, literally on the last day of the outgoing year, the new machine was officially adopted into the airborne forces and received the designation BMD-4. Within a few months, the first batch went to the 137th Guards Parachute Regiment of the 106th Division. It seemed that the job was done and the paratroopers would finally receive hundreds of new machines. But then a real catastrophe broke out that no one foresaw. The Volgograd tractor plant, an enterprise with a legendary history that during the Great Patriotic War produced T-34 tanks literally under bombing, found itself on the brink of death. Economic difficulties accumulated over the 90s, debts, and inefficient management led to the factory going bankrupt in 2005. Production lines stopped, skilled workers dispersed, and there was simply nowhere left to produce the BMD-4. In total, about 60 machines were assembled for the troops, but the combat vehicle never went into large-scale production. For the airborne forces, this was a severe blow because the main vehicle fleet still consisted of outdated BMD-1 and 2 models, while the latest development was left without a production base. However, the Army's need for a modern airborne vehicle did not go anywhere, and the project was transferred to the Kurgan machine building plant, which by that time was well known as the creator and constant producer of all infantry fighting vehicles, including the third model BMP. Kurgan engineers did not simply copy the Volgograd design, but carried out a deep modernization. They seriously reworked the shape of the hull, and unified it with the hull of the third model BMP, thanks to which many components, parts, and assemblies became interchangeable between the two machines. This decision was not just an engineering find, but a real salvation for the military budget because it reduced production costs and radically simplified maintenance and repair in field conditions. The engine, road wheels, torsion bars, and chassis elements were all now common with the third model BMP, which the Army had been operating for many years, and for which a well-established spare parts supply system existed. On March 21, 2008, at the Kurganmash testing ground, the result of this work was shown to the general public and the High Command of the Armed Forces for the first time. The vehicle was designated BMD-4M, where the letter M stood for modernized. It retained the fearsome Bakhcha combat module with its 100mm gun, but received an updated hull, a more powerful diesel engine, and an improved chassis. The plans were grandiose. According to the State Armaments Program, the Army was to receive up to 2,000 such machines. But instead of triumph, bureaucratic disputes began that dragged on for years. The Chief of the General Staff publicly stated that the cost of one BMD-4 was comparable to the price of a full-fledged tank and amounted to between $3.5 and $6 million. In 2012, Deputy Minister of Defense Alexander Sukhorukov even announced that the ministry would not purchase this machine due to low protection against bullets and mines. This statement caused a storm among military specialists. After all, an airborne vehicle, by definition, cannot have heavy armor, otherwise it would be impossible to drop it from the air. VDV Commander General Vladimir Shamanov openly spoke out in defense of the machine, stating the paratroopers' desire to adopt at least 200 units. The fate of the BMD-4M hung by a thread, and it seemed that the unique machine might remain a limited production item. While officials argued about the machine's fate, Kurganmash engineers continued to bring it to perfection. By the time state tests were completed in 2014, the BMD-4M represented a real arsenal on tracks, packed into a compact aluminum hull weighing only 13.5 tons. The machine's main trump card remained the 100mm 2A70 gun. It was this that turned light airborne equipment into something no other army in the world possessed. This gun is capable of sending heavy cast-iron high-explosive fragmentation shells to a range of about 5 to 6 kilometers. Each such shell, upon explosion, scatters deadly fragments for dozens of meters around. 34 such rounds are stored in an autoloader, which ensures a high rate of fire and relieves the crew of the need to manually feed heavy ammunition into the breech. But most importantly, this same barrel serves as a launcher for Arkan-guided anti-tank missiles, which are guided by a laser beam and are capable of hitting enemy armor at distances of over 5 kilometers, penetrating more than 700 millimeters of homogeneous armor. 4 such missiles are included in the standard ammunition load, meaning the BMD-4M crew can destroy an enemy tank while being far beyond the effective range of its return fire. The 30mm 2A72 automatic cannon, paired with the 100mm gun through a special bracket, solves entirely different tasks. 500 shells in the ammunition load allow it to effectively work against light enemy armor, destroy infantry in cover, and even fire at low-flying aerial targets. A vital structural detail is the rigid mounting of this cannon through a connecting bracket, thanks to which the barrel is not subject to oscillatory movements during automatic firing. For comparison, on some other combat vehicles, the 30mm cannon gives significant dispersion during long bursts, which seriously reduces accuracy at long distances. On the BMD-4M, this problem does not exist, and every shell lands exactly where the gunner aims. In addition to the 2 guns, a PKT machine gun with an ammunition supply of 2,000 rounds is installed in the turret, and 6 mortars for firing smoke grenades are placed on the sides, allowing the vehicle to be instantly hidden from enemy observation. But even the most powerful weaponry is useless without an accurate fire control system. And here, designers from the Tula Instrument Design Bureau created something outstanding. The gunner's sight is stabilized in 2 planes and equipped with a thermal imaging channel, a laser rangefinder, and an automatic target tracking system. This means the crew can detect and destroy the enemy day and night in any weather conditions. Moreover, they can conduct aimed fire not only from a stationary position, but also at full speed. The elevation angle of the gun reaches 60 degrees, which makes it possible to work from indirect firing positions, essentially using the vehicle as a self-propelled artillery unit. Beneath the armor lies a 500-horsepower diesel engine, which accelerates the 13-ton machine to speeds of over 70 kilometers per hour on the highway. The specific power is 37 horsepower per ton, a figure that many main battle tanks would envy. It is this specific power that provides the fantastic acceleration dynamics and maneuverability that are so important on the modern battlefield. The machine is capable of climbing slopes with a steepness of up to 35 degrees, crossing ditches 2 meters wide, and vertical walls up to 70 centimeters high. Special attention should be paid to the high-drop pneumatic suspension with adjustable ground clearance, which is regulated in a range from 190 to 590 millimeters. The machine can literally hug the ground, reducing its silhouette to a minimum, or, conversely, rise up to overcome complex obstacles. It is this suspension that ensures the possibility of dropping with the crew inside, absorbing the monstrous G-forces upon landing. Water jet propulsion units are located in the rear of the hull, thanks to which the machine confidently swims at a speed of 10 kilometers per hour, even with sea waves up to 3 points. The fuel tank capacity provides a range of 500 kilometers on the highway, which is an exceptional autonomy figure for light armor. The crew consists of 3 people: a commander, a gunner operator, and a driver mechanic. The troop compartment accommodates 6 soldiers who can leave the vehicle not only through the rear doors, but also through the top hatches, which is critical in an emergency or when under fire from the rear. The disputes surrounding the machine ended as suddenly as they began. In 2014, the BMD-4M successfully completed the full cycle of state tests, and all claims from officials about excessive cost and insufficient protection were dropped. Kurgan engineers managed to achieve what the Volgograd team could not. Thanks to deep unification with the third model BMP, the cost of one vehicle was reduced to approximately $1 million, which was several times cheaper than the original fourth model BMD. This argument proved decisive, and the Ministry of Defense finally signed a contract for serial production. In early 2015, the Airborne forces received the first 12 serial machines, which went to the Ryazan Higher Airborne Command School. Cadets and instructors, accustomed to the old BMD 1 and 2 models, sat at the controls of completely different equipment for the first time, with thermal imagers, laser rangefinders, and an autoloader for the 100mm gun. On May 9th of that same year, 17 brand-new BMD-4Ms drove across the cobblestones of Red Square during the Victory Day Parade. Millions of television viewers saw these low-slung aluminum machines with characteristic flat turrets for the first time. For the airborne forces, it was a moment of pride because a decade of waiting, scandals, and uncertainty finally ended in triumph. After that, deliveries proceeded at an increasing pace. In April and September 2016, 2 battalion sets of 31 machines each were transferred to the 137th Guards Parachute Regiment of the 106th Division in Ryazan. In early 2017, company sets of 10 machines were received by the 242nd VDV Training Center in Omsk. Then 2 battalion sets went to the 31st Separate Guards Air Assault Brigade in Ulyanovsk. In February 2018, another 31 machines arrived at the 104th Guards Air Assault Regiment. Kurganmash Zavod worked rhythmically, and by the early 20s, the total number of BMD-4Ms in the troops exceeded 200 units. But the truly impressive event was the large-scale drop conducted in September 2020. 10 BMD-4M fighting vehicles were dropped from transport aircraft using PB-950U and MKS-350 parachute systems. The entire operation went without a single failure. After landing, the crews converted the equipment to combat readiness in mere minutes and began training maneuvers. An entire company of airborne armor fell from the sky and immediately entered mock combat. No other branch of the military in any army in the world could demonstrate anything similar. Meanwhile, a discussion continued among military experts about why paratroopers need their own vehicle if a heavier and better protected third-model BMP exists. The answer to this question turned out to be extremely simple and boiled down to one word: mobility. The BMD-4M weighs 13.5 tons, while the third-model BMP weighs almost 19. This difference of over 5 tons has a colossal effect on the dynamics and maneuverability of the machine on cross-country terrain. Where a heavy BMP will slowly turn and choose a path, a light BMD instantly snaps into action, rapidly reaches a firing position, and just as lightning fast moves away. On a modern battlefield, where every minute in one spot can cost a life, it is this reaction speed that becomes the decisive survival factor. The tactics of using the BMD-4M are built precisely on this advantage. The machine moves to a designated sector previously scouted using an unmanned aerial vehicle, detects the enemy, delivers a swift fire strike from the 100mm gun or the 30mm automatic cannon, and instantly leaves the position, giving the enemy no time for return fire. Heavy 100mm high-explosive fragmentation shells, when firing from indirect positions, cover targets at distances of up to 6 kilometers. This makes the BMD-4M essentially a mobile artillery platform that appears, strikes, and vanishes faster than the enemy has time to react. The heavier third-model BMP does not possess such maneuverability, and that is why paratroopers who have tried the BMD-4M in action are no longer willing to give it up. This machine truly showed all its power in real combat conditions. BMD-4M crews operating in various directions quickly developed their own tactics that ideally utilized the main strengths of this equipment. The combat vehicles work in shifts, replacing each other at firing positions almost around the clock, giving the enemy not a minute of respite. Fire is conducted from both open and indirect positions, with the second option proving particularly in demand. The vehicle moves to a pre-prepared line. The crew receives target coordinates from a reconnaissance drone. The 100mm gun sends a series of high-explosive fragmentation shells along a high-angled trajectory. Within a few minutes, the BMD-4M moves to another position at full speed. The enemy fixes the point where the fire was coming from and delivers a retaliatory strike, but no one has been there for a long time. The link between the combat vehicle and reconnaissance drones has become one of the main tactical discoveries of recent years. A small quadcopter like a Mavic rises into the air, detects enemy positions, transmits exact coordinates to the crew, and the vehicle strikes without even appearing in the enemy's direct line of sight. Essentially, the BMD-4M turns into a highly mobile artillery system with its own eyes in the sky. This combination has proven so effective that the enemy often does not understand exactly where the shells are coming from. Arc-and-guided missiles launched through the barrel of the 100mm gun also found wide application for destroying armor and fortified firing points at long distances, where conventional shells already lose accuracy. Combat experience also showed that the aluminum armor, which was so criticized by Ministry of Defense officials, fully copes with its tasks when the vehicle is used tactically and correctly. The BMD-4M is not designed for head-on attacks on fortified positions. It is created for swift raids, fire strikes, and a quick withdrawal. In this role, it simply does not need heavy armor. Nevertheless, the experience of combat operations led to the appearance of additional armor protection kits installed on the hull and turret. These screens increase the vehicle's resistance to shrapnel damage and bullets from large-caliber machine guns up to 12.7 millimeters. In addition, Rostec developed and sent combat vehicles to the troops with additional protection against unmanned aerial vehicles, which was a response to one of the main threats of the modern battlefield: kamikaze drones that hunt for any armored vehicles. It is also worth mentioning that the BMD-4M became not just a combat vehicle, but an entire platform on the basis of which a new family of equipment for the airborne forces is being created. The Potitsilov anti-aircraft missile system, with a combat module from the Sosna anti-aircraft system, is designed to cover airborne units from aerial threats and is capable of being dropped from aircraft just like the base vehicle. The Lotos 120mm self-propelled artillery unit is to become the new long arm of the VDV, replacing the outdated Nona self-propelled guns that have served the landing force faithfully since the 80s. On the same chassis, a command vehicle with additional communication and control equipment, a recovery vehicle, and even a reconnaissance vehicle are being created. Essentially, a full-fledged combat ecosystem is forming around the BMD-4M, which will allow airborne units to operate completely autonomously, having at their disposal fire support, air defense, and technical security means. The path of this machine from the drawings of Tula and Volgograd designers to the real battlefield stretched across 2 decades and passed through the bankruptcy of the manufacturing plant, bureaucratic scandals, the threat of total project cancellation, and long years of refinement at Kurganmashzavod testing grounds. Today, the BMD-4M continues to arrive in the troops. The Kurgan machine-building plant is increasing production rates, and the crews who operate these machines prove time and again that the aluminum beast of the VDV is capable of solving tasks impossible for much heavier and more expensive armor. If you like this story, be sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what other military equipment you would like to hear about. Your support helps us make new episodes, and the most interesting suggestions from the comments will certainly become topics for the next videos.